कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति हुरिराजन्. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We are on page 368. This is the chapter M at Dakshineshwar, part 2. And the date is Thursday, December 27th, 1883. The chapter, both chapters, Amit Dakshineshwar Part 1 and Part 2, contain a lot of different things. There's a long stay with him, but he goes on different trips with Sri Ramakrishna. On that particular day, they went to Ishan's house, and last time we started the conversation, and you may remember that Thakur was introduced to Ishan's son, Suresh, and he was told that he was an attorney, a lawyer, and somehow Thakur seems to have taken to him. He seems to recognize that he's a nice young man with good qualities and everything, and some serious questions. And there's a long conversation just between Shrish and Sri Ramakrishna. Actually, Thakur answers some of his questions. And so most of this chapter will be Thakur and his conversation with Suresh, the son of Ishan. Ishan, oh, that's interesting. Ishan was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, and somehow we read that Swamiji was very close with one of Ishan's sons. I don't know if it's this one or not, or maybe somebody else. And Swamiji was very profuse in his praise of the Ishan for his charitable nature. He said every bit is charitable as Vidyasagar was. So Thakur was talking about the Sri had asked the question. It is extremely difficult to proceed toward God while leading the life of a householder. Not a question, but a statement. And then Thakur, this is part of the long answer that he gives. A man may lead the life of a householder after attaining knowledge, but he must attain knowledge first. Now, what do we mean by knowledge here? If we're talking about the highest type of knowledge, wisdom, then very few people will be able to do that. So we have to assume that this means some understanding of what is the goal of life, what is important in life, what is lasting, what is of substance in life, something like that, at least that much. And some idea regarding the real nature of the self, some idea regarding the nature of God, something at least. If the milk of the mind is kept in the water of the world, they get mixed. Therefore, he should turn the milk into curd and extract the butter from it by churning it in solitude. Then he may keep the butter in the water of the world. Therefore, you see, spiritual discipline is necessary. So now that we see the different steps, and not just attaining knowledge, but the first thing is to do some spiritual practice and go into solitude. Thakur would like to combine these two things. Going into solitude just for the sake of being in solitude is not enough. We go into solitude to do some spiritual practice without any disturbance from the world, And this is how the mind becomes strong. And we don't get so much of it attachment, and the mind doesn't get so much affected by other things. This is what it means for the milk of the mind to be turned into butter. And then when it's resting in the world, it won't mix with it. So therefore, you see, spiritual discipline is necessary. When the Ashwatha tree is a mere sapling, it must be enclosed by a fence, otherwise the cattle will eat it. But the fence may be taken away when the trunk grows thick and strong. Then even an elephant tied to the tree cannot harm it. So Thakur gives this illustration many times that we want to be a little bit protective of ourselves in the beginning of spiritual life. Now, this is always a question. What do we mean by the beginning of spiritual life? Or when do we reach that stage when we're no longer beginners in spiritual life? When we're pretty high up the ladder. So we can all consider ourselves beginners in spiritual life if we understand the end to mean God realization. So we're all beginners, but when we're young especially, and when just starting in spiritual life, we have to be especially careful. As we get a little bit older, then we're not so much affected by things. That if necessary, we have to mix with people for work and everything. We're not too much affected. But in the beginning, we have to be very careful with regard to company that we keep, with regard to even the types of enjoyments and entertainment and literature and movies, things like that. The more we can keep this fence around the mind, keep these external, outside, worldly thoughts from entering into the mind, the safer it is. The big mistake in spiritual life is to think that we've reached that stage where we can't be affected by anything, where the mind has become so strong that we can mix with anybody, do anything, and that we won't have any negative effect. We always have to be a little bit Shabdan Sadhu, Thakur used to say. Oh, holy man, beware. Be a little careful. You want to eat rice. Suppose you sit down somewhere and say, wood contains fire, and fire cooks rice. Can saying it cook the rice? You must get 2 pieces of wood, and by rubbing them together, bring out the fire. By eating siddhi, one becomes intoxicated and feels happy. But suppose you haven't eaten the stuff or done anything else with it. You simply sit down somewhere and mutter, siddhi, siddhi. Will that intoxicate you or make you happy? You may learn a great deal from books, but it is all futile if you have no love for God and no desire to realize Him. A mere pundit without discrimination and renunciation has his attention fixed on lust and gold. The vulture soars very high, but its eyes are fixed on the charnel pit. That alone is knowledge through which one is able to know God. All else is futile. Well, what is your idea about God? Now, he's telling all of this to this Shrish because he's a highly educated young man. In the very least, we know to be a lawyer is not a small thing. A lot of education and Western educated. So he's trying to impress upon him the need for direct experience and to show the relative importance of theoretical knowledge, but also that that's not the goal, that we have to have some type of direct experience. And in order to do that, we have to do some type of practice. You know, this idea of nowadays people talk about being spiritual, but not religious. Half the time it means they don't do anything. Yeah, really. It means that, no, you go to a church or temple or this and that. It's something. No, but I'm spiritual. What does it mean? If
It means not religious.
it means not religious, yeah, yeah. So it's nice to feel that we're not bound by just conventional religion. This is a good thing. Swamiji says it's good to be born in the church, but not to die in the church. That we want to go beyond the limitations of conventional religion. But if we want to think that we're on a spiritual path, we have to do spiritual practice. Spiritual life is nothing but spiritual practice with some goal, they're trying to achieve some goal. So he's trying to impress on this Suresh, this idea. So then he asks him, well, what is your idea about God? Suresh, sir, I feel that there is an all-knowing person. We get an indication of his knowledge by looking at his creation. Let me give an illustration. Now, this is one way of deducing the existence of God through anumana, that we use some logical reasoning that if we see this universe and the effect has a cause, there must be an ultimate cause. So we do this type of deductive reasoning, is anumana, and we can come to the conclusion that yes, if there's a creation, there must be a creator. This type of idea, highly theoretical. There are many different Western philosophy. You'll find that one philosopher will come with 5 proofs for the existence of God. There'll be all different types, all logical things. But for Thakur, this is okay. But it's not the same idea as having that realization, for God to be something living. So he says, sir, I feel there is an all-knowing person. We get an indication of his knowledge by looking at his creation. Let me give an illustration. God has made devices to keep fish and other aquatic animals alive in cold regions. As water grows colder, it gradually shrinks. But the amazing thing is that just before turning into ice, the water becomes light and expands. In the freezing cold, fish can easily live in the water of a lake. The surface of the lake may be frozen, but the water below is all liquid. If a very cold breeze blows, it is obstructed by the ice. The water below remains warm. It's funny, I remember I took physics in physics class when I was in 11th grade. And we had this old, you'll know, he probably was only in the 60s, seemed very old, very crusty, curmudgeon type professor. And we were talking about this, the fact that water gets heavier as it gets colder, but just before it crystallizes. So I asked him, and he looked at me and said, do you believe in God? I was so surprised that he would give any type of answer like that. But the point is that people will take these types of things to point to this idea that everything seems to be planned, that there's some intelligence behind everything. What is that called? Creation and intelligent creation. No. Anyhow, so this was one of the proofs for the existence of God that we find in many Western philosophies and Indian philosophy also, that if we look at nature and we see this intelligent design, which is really a kind of, it's not exactly what it sounds like. Intelligent design is a little bit of a creationism type of thing. But anyhow, this idea that if we look at nature, we see that there seems to be a plan. Say, for example, we take camouflage. And how do we account for the fact that we have certain animals that have the color of their fur or skin or something is such that they can be sitting on a leaf on a tree or something like that, these little tree frogs and things like that, and the other animals won't see them. They'll blend into the background unless there's an intelligent creator. This is the theory. Then what happened? And Darwin came along and upset the whole apple cart. He said, you're saying that there must be an intelligent creator who did all of this, because these are the things you see, but you don't see all of the creatures that didn't have enough of this camouflage and died out. So this, what do they call that? The natural selection. Yeah, natural selection. So this is a big blow to a lot of these religious thinkers. And Darwin was very much looked down upon by very religious people. How what will happen to our idea of God and everything like that. So Thakur is saying, okay, these are okay. These are all nice theories. They're just theories. They have some positive thing to it, some negative thing to it. You want to really know what's the proof of God. God can be realized. You'll always go back to that. This is the ultimate proof. Everything else, it sounds good. It's a nice theory. But we can have somebody who comes along like Darwin and say, yeah, there's a reason why it looks like all these animals are camouflaged and have natural protection and everything, because the ones that didn't, they didn't survive. Survival of the fittest, that type of idea. Anyhow, this is his understanding. Thakur is not going to look down upon it. It's at least he's not saying I don't believe in God or anything like that. He has some idea, all knowing. So this intelligence, this God has some plan for the universe. Now you remember what Swamiji said. What did he say? This plan of the universe, devilish. He said I could have created a better universe. Yeah, if we look at all of the destruction and everything that takes place, equal amount, good and bad and everything. So there are pluses and minuses to all of these theories. Master, that God exists may be known by looking at the universe, but it is one thing to hear of God, another thing to see God, and still another thing to talk to God. So he's going to make that big distinction there. And some have heard of milk, some have seen it, and some again have tasted it. You feel happy when you see milk. You are nourished and strengthened when you drink it. You will get peace of mind only when you have seen God. You will enjoy bliss and gain strength only when you have talked to him. Now, there's talking to God is something that Thakur mentioned many, many times as one of the signs of the Vijnani, that after God realization, coming back down again, that one can see God, one can talk to God, one can have a personal relationship with God. These are mystical types of things. Unless we have that experience, very hard for us to comprehend what it means. We hear it, we assume it's something internal, God dwelling within the heart, something like that. But how to hear it through the mind, external, very hard to understand these things. But these were so real, the Thakur experienced, and other great saints, that we can't dismiss it. Swamiji liked to dismiss it in the beginning. These are all hallucinations, monarbhul, the hallucinations of your mind. But then Swamiji later became convinced of all of that. So Thakur is emphasizing two things. One is practice, and the other is some direct experience. In between, we can say jnana, that this knowledge I'm going to take as some discriminative knowledge of what's real and what's unreal, what's transitory, what's permanent, what's of real value in life. I don't think it means it's Brahmajnana, the highest type of wisdom. That's what we're aiming for, of course. So then Suresh, he says, we do not have time to pray to God. Now, he's a lawyer, attorney, and that means that his time is fully taken up with all of the work that he has. I don't know much about him, if he's married, family, or anything else, but anyhow, for most people, this is true. Most people, especially younger, family and everything, before that retirement age, that they're kept very busy with their work and with social obligations and family and everything else. How much time do they have? Master with a smile. That is true. Nothing comes to pass except at the right time. So we can assume a little bit that when we're fully involved with the world and we don't have that much spare time, perhaps if we had that spare time, we wouldn't be able to utilize it, perhaps. That when the time is really right, Thakur says, Divine Mother herself will lessen our duties. Like the daughter-in-law in the house who gets pregnant, mother-in-law month by month reduces her duties. Nothing comes to pass except at the right time. Going to bed, a child said to his mother, Mother, please wake me up when I feel the call of nature. My son, said the mother, that urge itself will wake you up. I don't have to wake you. Yeah, so many times we also, we wonder, uh, is it time to give up everything? Is it time to take initiation? Is it time to devote myself fully to spiritual life? That when that time comes, that question won't arise in the way that makes us really wonder about it. We'll have some conviction. We'll have some feeling that yes, this is the thing. I have to do this. Uh, we see this very often. Those who take the monastic life, or those who really are ready to give up everything, and that little conviction has to be there, and that happens not because we want it to happen. It happens. It may be circumstances. It may be just karma. It may be mother's will. We don't know, but it'll happen. So this idea when Thakur talks about uh, giving up everything and devoting the full mind to God, you hold on to the world with one hand and God with the other hand, until you can hold on to God with both hands. And we want to know, well, when? How do we decide? The answer is always it happens on its own. You know, the example of the scab. We scrape the hand and it bleeds a little bit and then the scab forms. And somebody says, well, how do I know when it's time to, when it's healed underneath, that I can pull the scab off? We don't decide that. When it's healed underneath, the scab falls off on its own. So this was Thakur was meant not to pull anything off. But we can do things, of course. If our goal is to renounce, if our goal is to hold on to God with both hands, there are things we can do to hasten that and to make ourselves ready for it. But if we're not ready, then it won't be much avail. Then Thakur makes a very interesting statement. It is all decided beforehand by God what each one shall receive. Now, we'll find this two theories which either can be seen as conflicting or as dovetailing. One is the will of God, the other is karma. Either we say, well, that all decided beforehand, this is our prarabdha karma, that we come into this world and there'll be certain things that will be part of our destiny somehow, however we understand it. And others will say, no, whatever happens is the will of the mother. Then others will say, well, this is how the will of the mother works. So we'll see. We'll get to this conversation a little bit later. So it is all decided beforehand by God, what each one shall receive. Of course, we can take these as spiritual attitudes also. That whatever comes to us is what we deserve, either through karma or God's will. And that gives us surrender and acceptance. We can take it that way also. A mother-in-law used to measure rice with a dish for her daughters-in-law, but it was not enough for them. One day the dish was broken, and that made the girls happy. But the mother-in-law said to them, children, you may shout and dance, but I can measure the rice with the palm of my hand. To Suresh, surrender everything at the feet of God. See, he won't say these things to just anybody. And he was so close with the Ishan. Ishan was quite elderly at that time. So close with the Ishan and probably felt that closeness with the son and everything. So he's really giving beautiful advice. Surrender everything at the feet of God. What else can you do? Give him the power of attorney. See, what else can we do? Sometimes we feel helpless. We feel absolutely helpless because of external circumstances or the nature of our mind. External circumstances, sometimes we feel just we're being smothered and crushed. What can we do? So many obligations, and this happens and that happens, and the parents to look after, children to raise. So many different things happen. Somebody loses a job, we have to go and find some other work. So many things, and we feel crushed sometimes. And then other times we don't have all of that, and the mind doesn't cooperate. So what can we do? The mind doesn't cooperate. We also have to take that. That's also an external circumstance on some level. Internal, of course, but we can also practice surrender with that. Now, surrender doesn't mean that we don't try to change things. It means that we do our best to change them, but we have to accept things in the long run. Otherwise, what do? We beat our heads against the wall, and we beat ourselves up. We say, oh, why am I like this? And I have so many bad tendencies. We have people like that, good, wonderful people, and they're too hard on themselves, criticize themselves too much. So we have to practice surrender with regard to ourselves also. This is the way I am. What can I do? I don't like it. I'm trying to change. I happen to have a bad temper. I happen to be a little lazy. I happen to get annoyed at people sometimes. I'm doing my best not to, but this is the mind I've been given. What can I do? I accept it, try to change it, but accept it both. So this is beautiful. Surrender everything at the feet of God. What else can you do? Give him the power of attorney. Let him do whatever he thinks best. If you rely on a great man, he will never injure you. Now, what do? This is the real difficulty with his attitude. Suppose I'm faced with a decision to make. I have a good job offer that takes me to another city. I'll make more money, but I'll leave the center. What do? Now somebody says, let God decide. You know, okay. Oh, do we get a letter in the mail? I mean, what happens? How do we do that? Let God decide. Give the power of attorney. So somehow we have to try to make the best decision. Try to think what is best for everyone in the long run. Try to eliminate all the selfish ideas. Try to think what will give the best spiritual environment for us. Try to come up with the most sensible type of answer. Because for most of it, God doesn't talk to us. We may look for signs. Many people look for signs. They may come, they may not come. That may be our own mind, and we don't know any of these things. So how do we decide? This is always a big question. That how do we know what to do and what not to do? We'll get that famous statement of Duryodhana.
Feel like he's indweller. If he's indweller, then whatever decision we are making, whether we know it or we don't know it, as a
okay, God is the indweller.
He is directing us.
Yeah, see, we three different ideas. God is the indweller as the sakshin. Sakshin won't tell us what to do. Right? God is the indweller in terms of the antaryamin. The antaryamin can guide us. God is the indweller as the karta, as the agent. God alone is doing everything. Three different points of view, three different attitudes that we can take. Now, there's something in Western thought called conscience. What is conscience? There's a belief that there's something inside of us which will tell us right from wrong, which is a little independent of any temporal or cultural biases or anything. Whether it's true or not, hard to say. So there'll be a society that says, okay, in war, it's all right to kill people in war. And so a few people will come along and say, yes, but something inside tells me that under no circumstances is it right to kill people. We call these people conscientious objectors. And we give a little bit of absoluteness to conscience. That it's not a relative type of thing. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. To a large extent, I think it is. To a large extent, that everything the mind tells us The mind will tell us, do this. This will be fun. You'll enjoy this. Some inner voice. Inner voice seems to say, that's not really the right thing to do. Now, how much is learned from childhood? How much is really some inner voice? These are very hard to say. They're hard to be able to understand what this indwelling presence means. For the jnani, really the light of consciousness and the observer and everything, not telling us what to do. The antaryamin, these will be more devotional people. They'll say, yes, God is within directing us. I speak as thou makest me speak. Thakur, yeah, now discrimination is our way of trying to decide what is the right thing to do. But this idea that everything we do is the will of God, we'll get to this. These are fascinating ideas.
But the attitude is comforting, Maharaj. If you feel like, yeah, he's behind all your decisions, then
the attitude is comforting, but is it real? Yeah. See, we can fool ourselves also. We'll get to Duryodhana. Yeah, I hope we'll get to it here. But yeah, this is even the madman, even the murderer, even the religious fanatic has that tremendous comfort that this is God's will, that I'm doing God's will. So we have to be cautious with this type of idea. So this idea of power of attorney, this is one way of everything we do. You see, Girish, he learned this from Thakur, is every time he was about to do something, he had to ask himself, am I doing it out of this wretched ego? If I can eliminate this wretched ego and this desire for enjoyment and pleasure and everything, and then I can feel the Thakur's will or God's will. Or if we have an ideal, see, even in Gita, we have this question, how do we know karya, akarya? How do we know what to do? What is the right thing to do? So Sri Krishna says, we need a standard. We need a pramana. So let the shastra, so it means let the scriptures or the behavior of a great soul, they set the ideal. Let that be the ideal that we can follow. Then we have some sense that we're doing something we can say is God's will. We can say. You remember Holy Mother when she was young, she used to pray, Mother, make my will one with your will. Now it's interesting. Huh? We can at the same time say, oh, everything is God's will. But she had that understanding that I can have some selfish desire for something that I can't say is God's will, that I have to say, no, it's my will. Now, how we work all of this out philosophically is a different question. But from a practical point of view, we can make that distinction. We can talk about children who are very willful. Some are obedient, willful, obedient. They'll be the two opposite sides. Obedient means they're not always doing things just because they want to do it. They'll do it because they're told or asked or requested, or they know it's the right thing to do. Willful, I don't care what you say or who you are or anything. I want it. In that way. So anyhow, let's go on because we'll get more of this discussion. So let him do whatever he thinks best. If only we knew. Wouldn't that be nice? If only we knew with some certainty. Thakur's case was different. He was so devoid of any ego that there was nothing inside but mother. To whatever ego was there would be directed by mother. That child ego, that perfectly purified ego. It is no doubt, so the conversation continues. It is no doubt necessary to practice spiritual discipline, but there are two kinds of aspirants. The nature of one kind is like that of the young monkey, and the nature of the other kind is that of the kitten. The young monkey, with great exertion, somehow clings to its mother. If you've been to the zoo and you see it, even with big apes and everything, that they'll be underneath and they'll be holding on like that, and the mother can jump and places. Mother doesn't have to do anything, and they'll just cling and they won't fall. It's really remarkable to see. The young monkey with great exertion somehow clings to its mother. Likewise, there are some aspirants who think that in order to realize God, they must repeat his name a certain number of times, meditate on him for a certain period, and practice a certain amount of austerity. Okay, so this is like the monkey. An aspirant of this kind makes his own efforts to catch hold of God. But the kitten of itself cannot cling to its mother. It lies on the ground and cries, mew, mew. It leaves everything to its mother. The mother cat sometimes puts it on a bed, sometimes on the roof behind a pile of wood. She carries the kitten in her mouth hither and thither. The kitten doesn't know how to cling to the mother. Likewise, there are some aspirants who cannot practice spiritual discipline by calculating about japa or the period of meditation. All they do is cry to God with yearning hearts. God hears their cry and cannot keep himself away. He reveals himself to them. Okay, now, which one is better? Which one should we follow? Which one should we practice? Yeah, I don't. When Thakur is clearly saying that the second is better, he's clearly saying that, and that we have to reach that stage. But is he saying that we can just start out like that? He says there are some who can. These will be rare people. I take this to mean that the first is the illustration of Vaidhi Bhakti. Now, this Vaidhi Bhakti is for beginners. And we already decided that most of us are beginners, that we have no choice. If in the beginning we simply say, no, I'll just lie here. I won't do anything. I'll let mother do with me what she wants. We'll lie there. Nothing will happen. That we can't practice that until the time comes. This is what Thakur was saying. Until the right time comes. That means that all these examples about the scab forming and everything, this has to do with it when Vaidhi Bhakti ends and when this Anuraga begins. So there's Anuraga. At that point, we don't decide, I don't have to do this, I don't. It falls off. And why don't we have to repeat the name of God a certain number of times? Because automatically we're repeating God or thinking of God day and night without effort. If we try to do the first, it's like trying to jump to the roof without climbing the steps. So I look at these as two different stages. Now there'll be some, because of good samskaras, because of grace, somehow they're born already at that higher stage. And that longing is so tremendous that they don't have to worry about these other things. Otherwise, we have no other choice but to follow some rigorous routine, spiritual practice, day in and day out. And this is how, by God's grace, one day we'll reach this other level. So we can say there are two different personality types. That one is for the bhakti, one for the. We can do it that way, but I look at its stages. I look at it. It's not that one is better than the other, but one follows the other.
You can also look at it slightly differently. Jnani is a little child and a bhakta is a king.
The bhakta, if we want, we can say that the first one is or for the jnani or for the karma yogi, somebody who with the effort and everything, and that the other not see the path of devotion. You'll find that the bhaktas, they'll do more of this japa than anybody else, and they may have lots of rules and rituals and everything that they follow on the path of devotion. But this bhakti and anuraga are two different things. Now we're talking about this anuraga. When that comes, this passionate divine love of God, then we don't have to worry about any of these other things. They'll fall off on their own. So it's not so simple to say, yes, I'll follow this kitten devotion, and that I will give up all effort to do spiritual practice, that I won't bother about repeating a certain number of times. It doesn't matter if I sit in the morning or afternoon. What does it mean? I will end up sleeping late in the morning.
The jnani may think that he is putting forth all his effort, but that ability to put forth that effort itself may be grace, which the jnani doesn't know.
Okay, let me see if I can repeat this. The jnani may think
Think
Yeah.
that he's the baby monkey.
that the jnani may think that he's the baby monkey and he's doing everything, through his own effort. Yeah.
But that ability to put forth that effort,
But the ability to put forth that effort is also the grace of God, and he'll realize it later. Yeah.
this
See,
one
of
has
course,
to-
this desire to realize God in the beginning will manifest itself as this longing to do spiritual practice. That's how it will manifest in the beginning. The tremendous desire. In Thakur's life, it manifests itself by weeping and wailing and rubbing his face on the ground, but still spending a whole night in meditation and prayer.
12 years.
Well, that was but the first 4 years before he had that the Mother Kali experience and everything. Yeah, so they're like,
One slope is coming to an
yeah.
Yes. Outlook from here is yogam, karma karana vichya.
Yeah, but good. In Gita, we have this stage theory, which is very important. This for those who want to reach the first stage of yoga. Those ararukshur munir yoga. Those who want to reach that, then karma muchyate. Then we have to act. We have to do our sadhana. We have to work very hard. And then yoga rudhasya, for one who's reached that level of yoga, it doesn't mean God realization. Then shama karanmuchyate, then removing ourselves from the world, nivritti marga, this
there,
practicing surrender.
there this classical Vedanta teachers say when the stage of karma is crossed, then it gives you the qualification for the higher Vedanta practices.
For jnana yoga. This is the way Shankaracharya will explain it. First karma yoga, then jnana yoga. And the other way of understanding it is when we reach that stage of yoga, it talks about yoga, then the sense of ego is gone. Then who is there to do the spiritual practice? But we still haven't realized God. So
Nididhyasana starts from that after this.
So they'll take this first part as preliminary. This is the jnana yoga. This is Shankaracharya. This is that preparation. We become adhikaris for jnana yoga once we've reached that first level. And we do that through our spiritual practice and sadhana. But these things work both for the path of jnana yoga and bhakti, for all the different yogas, that on the beginning we have to put forth tremendous effort, and gradually through every path, the sense of ego starts to wear away. And when that starts to wear away, then there's nothing left but surrender. The jnani won't call it surrender exactly, but at that point, his I is gone. So the Brahman itself will fill us in, something like that. There are different ways of explaining it. But this two-tier theory, it works for every spiritual path. For the bhakta, the time will come when this need to do a certain amount of japa and prayer and puja and everything will just drop off on its own. A type of divine madness will come upon someone. They won't be capable of it anymore. Thakur was incapable of doing puja in the Kali temple after all of that. They had to have a different pujari and everything. So that will happen.
Only this karma yoga as a means. Shankaracharya is dogmatic that it's only an instrument to purify, not
Shankaracharya does not really like this idea that karma yoga alone can take us to the highest goal. They'll say this karma yoga will help purify the heart, and that will allow knowledge to dawn. He has a very simple axiom that if ignorance is the cause of bondage, then the only cause of liberation is knowledge. That'll be the real cause. But I think it's not such a big distinction that if we have to purify the mind to have the highest realization, and we do through karma yoga, why not say karma yoga is also a cause of liberation? It's a little bit of a logical thing. It's technical. Yeah, a bit of a technicality. But during Shankaracharya's time, it was necessary because there were so many ritualists, the Mimamsakas and everything, And those who were insisting, no, even that you should never give up this karma kanda, this keeping the ritual fire and doing yajna and all of that. So there was a reason for it during his day. Even Thakur, when he talks about karma yoga, very often he's referring to the performance of ritual.
Yeah.
Very often. Every once in a while he'll say, yes, doing everything as an offering God is also karma yoga. It's very good. But this idea of just doing formal worship and practice, that has to be transcended at some point. Even the jnani, at some point, he transcends this vichara.
There's a beautiful article on this by Ishan.
Yeah.
In Vedanta.
Yeah, it's also in that book.
It's all has to do with the ego, that's all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all to purify the ego and then eliminate the ego. Now, Thakur is also very clear that this ego, it can get refined, it can get transformed, it can get ripened, but it doesn't disappear except in the stage of samadhi, or there'll be times, but it comes back. So it comes back transformed, though, and that we utilize it. It's very practical. Thakur is extremely practical with all of this.
But in some places, even Swamiji, I think he tells Mahapurush Maharaj the reason why he instituted all this Nishkam karma for sadhus is because, the sadhus that are coming to that will be following us may not be able to spend all their
Yeah. So this is a question. Many people were asked why Swamiji started. If sadhus are supposed to practice the path of knowledge and they're supposed to withdraw and everything, why so much of social service work and all of that? Now there were two reasons. One, of course, is that he had this love of the country. He wanted to uplift the country and help people, but he also understood. And there was a conversation he told Mahapurush Maharaj, one of his brother disciples, that and Holy Mother also used to say the same thing. You direct disciples, we know you can go out and live under a tree, and every these young boys who are come, they're not of that same caliber. And unless they have some constructive work to do, then the mind will wander and everything. They need this karma yoga to purify. They need to do selfless work, and selfless work also develops the heart. Working for other people, this is also a devotional thing.
Shankaracharya's point is, the moment you use the word caliber, then it automatically means that karma yoga is preparatory and
but everything is preparatory, and then grace comes. That's why this vichara is preparatory. This always analyzing what's real and what's unreal. That all of this is just to lead us to that point where the mind merges in something higher, where we become free from attachment to things, and that's also preparatory that way. Everything is preparatory to direct experience and to that state of oneness.
To take Thakur's analogy of the palm leaf dropping, that doesn't really mean signify realization.
No,
but it means a stage has been attained.
It means a stage has been attained. All of these things, When we talk about the scab falling off, this doesn't mean the roof. This means we can leave behind the Vaidhi Bhakti and go to Anuraga, and that we can practice this kitten type of devotion if we want to look at it from that point of view. So did I finish this? And likewise, there are some aspirants who cannot practice spiritual discipline by calculating about japa or the period of meditation. This was Thakur. This is a rare thing. All that they do is cry to God with yearning hearts. God hears their cry and cannot keep himself away. He reveals himself to them. So this is the end of that particular conversation. At noon, the host wished to feed the master and his devotees. Sri Ramakrishna was smilingly pacing the room. Now and then he exchanged a few words with the musician. See how M is always hanging around Sri Ramakrishna. Whoever he's having a conversation with, he's over here, getting ready to write everything down. Musician. It is God alone who is both the instrument and the cause. Duryodhana, now we'll get this. Duryodhana said to Krishna, O Lord, thou art seated in my heart. I act as thou makest me act. Oh, was he the one who says it? I thought Thakur said it. I thought Thakur quoted it. He does it himself, huh? Let me see. Or just Thakur say it again later. Oh, let me see. Anyhow, this is a very famous statement. This, I know Dharma. Huh? I know Dharma, but this, I don't know how to perform it. I know the right thing to do, but I don't know how to do it. I know the wrong thing to do, but I don't know how to desist from doing it. So this Duryodhana, he's saying to Sri Krishna that Tvaya Hrishikesha Haristitena, by you dwelling within my heart, Yata Prayuktoham Tata Karomi.
Yatha
Niyuktosmi Tata Karomi. So I do as you make me do, seated within my heart. Now, I'm not an expert on this Mahabharata story. I was trying to find out what is the context of all of this, because this can be understood in so many different ways. He could be saying, don't blame me for anything, because the Duryodhana is not the same as Thakur saying, I act as you mother, as you make me act, I speak as you make me speak. We hear that this is the attitude of the God-realized soul can take, and nobody else can take. So what is Duryodhana doing?
Maybe Maharaj,
You have to speak loud so they can hear you. No. Huh? Oh, okay. Yeah. So anyhow, this is he having a moment of clarity that he knows that this is the real truth? Is he just trying to get out of all responsibility, or is he trying to say that you've made me like this? You dwell within my heart. You're giving me these tendencies to do evil things. What can I do about it? How to take it? And
Duryodhana may feel that he has a role to play.
Oh yes, and this is the other one, that this is Leela. Well, you've given me this role to play, that I'm the one who has to do all of this in order for this Leela to be enacted properly. I also have my role to play. I'm doing as you want me to do. I have to play the bad guy. Somebody has to play the villain. Huh?
Was this Swami in the same context when he said Janani Dharma?
That's the same verse.
But I saw the interpretation differently. The interpretation somebody gave me was basically only talking about his mind, not talking about the God or anything. It's just my mind that in my mind I know what's right.
But there are two versions of that verse.
No. Even if you say that, still the second line is, I do as you make me do, dwelling within my heart.
No, the slight difference.
Yeah, there's a second
one. Is Tvaya Hrishikeshena
Hridastitena.
Directly talking to Krishna.
Right.
And in another, Kenapi Devena
Right.
Hridastitena.
Yeah.
I don't know.
As if someone within is making me do something like that, but still, yeah. So anyhow, this is.
But that's a compulsive behavior that he had, Duryodhana. He knew what was. See, compulsive behavior, you know what is right and what is wrong.
Even Arjuna had that question, that why do I do papam chariti? Why does a person do that? And what does Sri Krishna tell him? Does he say, I dwell within your heart and I make you do it? Yeah, he says it there, but here he says, Kama esha krodha esha. That is because of the rajas within you, you're doing all these things.
You only have to drive the question further. Why, from where did this Kama Krodha come to that person?
Yes. So we'll get to all of this. Thakur is going to give all these answers. I like these questions, but there's no one answer that satisfies everyone. It's all spiritual attitude. Huh? Okay. So, O Lord, thou art seated in my heart. I act as thou makest me act. Master with a smile. Yes, that is true. It is God alone who acts through us. He is the doer, undoubtedly, and man is his instrument. Okay, now this is one point of view. From the highest point of view, if we see that God alone dwells within all beings, this is ego with some false superimposition. that there's nobody within, there is no individual. Jiva is just an idea, and God alone dwells within, then God alone is doing everything. A very high point of view. So we're starting with this. It'll come down to our level a little bit. But it is also true that an action cannot fail to produce its result. So then why do we do the karma?
For future agami.
Your stomach will certainly burn if you eat hot chili. It is God who has ordained that chili will burn your stomach. So this is why I was saying that God's will and God's plan. If we say everything is God's will, we can say, well, his will is that we reap as we sow. That we eat hot chili, that the stomach will burn. That this is the will of God, that we take responsibility for our actions. Not everyone will accept that interpretation. This is my point. There are different spiritual attitudes, but Thakur, he's going to point to the other side of things. Yeah, you can easily say that God dwells within, that's why you're doing all of this, but what about your samskaras? They're the ones who are driving. What about kama krodha? They're the ones that are driving you to do all of these things. You want to put all the blame on God. When me dwelling within your heart, Sri Krishna could say to him, you're going to blame me for all of this. Huh? So it is God who has ordained that chili will burn your stomach. So both, will of God, law of karma. If you commit sin, you must bear its fruit. Now, first he's saying that there's no you. There's only God dwelling within. He's the real doer. Now we're saying, but you're committing sin. Yeah. Yeah. So this jiva is real as long as we believe in the jiva. It's a very funny idea. When we realize that it's not real, then it's not real. But when we think it's real, it is real. And we have to utilize it and work through it. We can climb the stairs to the roof and then find out that there were no stairs. The lower bird goes higher, higher, and higher, and he realized that, yeah, so do I. Yeah, anybody has this idea that to perform action, not to perform action, that has some sense of will, has to accept their individuality. Yeah, we have to do that. And this is why Thakur's always saying, everyone's saying that, yeah, you're doing everything you want and you like and everything, and then saying everything is God's will. If we want to say everything is God's will, we have to completely eliminate this lower, selfish, thick, hard ego. That's the only way.
What you believe should be manifesting in your life.
Yeah, yeah. There should be no thievery within the heart, no hypocrisy. And this is very interesting. All of this. It is God who has ordained that chili will burn your stomach. If you commit a sin, you must bear its fruit. But one who has attained perfection, realized God, cannot commit sin. Now, still, there's an ego there. One who has realized God. That's the jiva. The jiva realizes God. But the jivahood is practically gone. That ego is so ripened and so one with God, in such a close relationship with God, as a child of God, servant of God, or even this feeling of oneness with God, that there's barely a distinction at that point. And there's a test. We can't do anything to harm anybody. If we do, Duryodhana, if he's doing all sorts of evil things and saying, I'm doing as God is making me do within, then we have to take it as these samskaras and these tendencies, or this role, this lila role that I have to play, something like that. But we can't blame this antaryaman within, trying to direct him to do better things, maybe. But this is that conflict, that the lower mind and the higher mind, there's a conflict that takes place until this purification of the mind gets accomplished. So, but one who has attained perfection, realized God, cannot commit sin. An expert singer cannot sing a false note. A man with a trained voice sings the notes correctly. Saregama padhani. Very often he says the expert dancer will never miss a beat. The meal was ready. The master and the devotees went to the inner court where they were treated to a generous feast. Okay, we'll stop here because then He's going to resume his conversation with Suresh in the afternoon. He'll have his lunch, take a little rest, and then we'll continue with it. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanugambhatudvikraham Ishavataram Parameshamidam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namah. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us.